Hello, everyone. Can you hear me in the back there? Okay, great. My name is Steve Hemingway, and I'm here at Josie's request again. Thank you, Josie. Josie is an amazing person. She really single-handedly has kept this movement alive. But you too, you people for coming out, everyone for coming out after it's been a while. We thought the environmental impact report may have been enough, but maybe it hasn't been with all the state laws and things. So tonight's going to be a very interesting night. A lot of things to talk about. We're really lucky to have people from surrounding cities to come give us their perspective, and they've been giving us their support over all these years, and we're very thankful for all of you and everyone who's speaking. So thank you. And so what we're going to have now is starting out with Josie. Give you a little background about Josie. She moved to Torrance when Eisenhower was in office. Hey, that could have been 1960. She's been a lifelong advocate for causes. She was involved with a group called Women Helping Women, specializing in breast cancer awareness, and that's become a very big movement, and Josie was one of the forefront people involved in that. She testified before Congress, Senate, the FDA, the National Institutes of Health. So our little Josie here has been very influential her whole life. So Josie, it's been 7 years. You've been working so hard. Everybody give it up for Josie Vanderpest. Come on up. I guess you're standing here with the camera. There you go.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Okay, can you hear me? Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank all our flyer distributors. Joan Davison, Dennis Bregman, I hope I have that right, Heather Sanders, Roman Baker, Joe Leung, David Brent, and David Hensler. A big thanks. Let's give them all a hand. A big thank you to all who are speaking tonight and for all you have done for your communities. Being supportive of this issue is very important to all of us. It doesn't just go to Torrance, it just doesn't go to the Hill. It will go everywhere. Some of the things that Save Our Neighborhood has accomplished are we assembled groups of very talented citizens in Torrance that has helped this movement go on and present to the city of Torrance. We consulted with city of staff, council members, and other experts. We raised funds, hired an attorney, an environmental expert. We mobilized hundreds of people to write letters in opposition that were included in the environmental impact report, 960 of them. We held meetings to inform residents. What brought this meeting to my attention tonight that I felt a need for was a letter that was sent to the city council members, Torrance City Council members, and you have that in your hand, making a request for special treatment to go forward with the project. The city and community have had over 7 years and 3 changes of city council to bring benchmark quality housing, and it's not here yet. Even though we are looking our best bowling alley, Gable House, for a massive multifamily housing project, Raylan criticizes the city of Torrance for not changing Butcher Hill from single family to multifamily. Even though all the underlying technical development reports for the 248 apartment projects have expired and needed to be reworked and revised, Torrance Planning Department says it will take 2 years to process Raylan. Raylan wants 1 year. Let's cut it short, he says. Raylan says the city makes a mistake by not recognizing from by not rezoning from single-family homes to multi-family housing. Raylan wants the city to change the general plan and zoning to allow the 248 units. We see no reason to change the general plan. We are not, save our neighborhood and our residents and our participants, are not anti-development. In fact, we have always supported the development of the site into single-family residences per R1 zoning. While we don't object to single-family residence, we prefer the land be turned over for open space if possible, maybe a conservancy. That would end everything. As you know, to do something like this to keep people organized, I am going to ask you, it's like church when they pass the plate. We pass our Save Our Neighborhood bag, because we only got a bag. If you could give anything, it'd be greatly appreciated so we can carry on and expenses incurred. So thank you very much, and we'll put this out.
Thank you, Josie. Good job. Okay, our next speaker is Mike Griffiths. He's a long-time Torrance volunteer, has an impressive resume. He's currently a city council member. He's been there about 10 years. He's trying to retire. Maybe the citizens will let him go, we don't know. But he did, before he was on city council, he did 8 years on the Planning Commission, the Energy Conservation Commission, the Environmental Quality Commission. And if that wasn't enough, he worked tirelessly for the YMCA and Salvation Army. Give it up for Mike. Come on, Mike.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Josie. I'm honored to be here in front of you all today. Yes, as Steve said, I've been on the Torrance City Council, and I'm the District 6 representative, which includes this area here. I live in District 6. I live just south of PCH. I can see the tower of the airport from my front yard. If anybody's interested, I put some cards on the next to the back table that tell about me, including my contact information. So if anybody wants to reach me after I speak here today and have questions that I can't answer, or you have other issues or problems, feel free to email me. I love to help our residents and businesses with any issues that they have. So Josie asked me to speak on a couple of things, and probably one of the things that you would like me to speak on is the project that Butcher Solana has proposed. And I really can't talk about it, unfortunately, because as a seated city council member, if there's a potential item coming before the council, I can't take a public position on an item without fear of having to recuse myself for talking about or voting on that item when it comes before council. So I can't take a public position. I can state facts on things, and I can state for a fact that the letter that was sent out that you may all have a copy of was sent to the city council, and it did ask for some things. Nothing has come to the city council formally. I can say that because it's a fact. And so whether or not if it does, I can't say how I would vote on it. But certainly I value the opinions of the residents in our community. I value the work that your whole organization does. And I take that into consideration as part of what I do when I decide on how I vote on any particular item. So Josie's asked me to talk about a couple of other things that do affect things like this. And one of those things that could affect this project and many, many other projects in our city is bills that are coming out of the state, up in the state legislature in Sacramento. That's affecting what's going on with the housing projects in our community, and it's taking our ability as a city council and planning commission, it's taking our ability to control those projects out of our hands. And it's forcing, the state is forcing us to put in certain types of projects that we as a city historically have not approved and actually in many cases have made illegal. In fact, there's no such thing as an R1 zone property anymore. If you think you had an R1 zone property, you don't anymore. It might still be zoned R1, but R1 in everyone's mind used to say, well, I can have one residential unit on that property. Well, now you can have up to 3, and that's state law. We have no say over it, and anyone on any R1 zone lot in our city, in fact statewide, can build what we call ADUs, an ADU, regular ADU or a junior ADU, up to two of these units under certain conditions on their property without any public hearing or notification and without any review by the public or even the planning commission. It's over the counter, and as long as it meets all our building codes, it can be approved. If it happens to block your view, if you happen to live in the Riviera and you think your view is protected, it is no longer protected. The state has taken that away from you. These laws now come into play. These are what we call state mandates, and they've taken our ability to make decisions for your community away from us. We feel that that's wrong. Our whole council is 100% united against these types of bills that the Sacramento is passing. And so you may have seen, and you may have even been a victim of an ADU popping up in your neighborhood or next to you, where somebody's turned a garage into a 2-story project. And I'm seeing a lot of these popping up. In fact, I've asked our planning department how many ADUs have we approved, and since this ADU law went into place a couple years ago, the city's already approved like close to 300 ADUs in our city. And there's nothing being discussed in the public about these. If somebody comes forward with an ADU project, they want to build an ADU that's 2 stories in their backyard, they can do it as long as it meets the building requirements and a few basic rules that our building codes do allow us to manage. So other state bills that are coming forward that are affecting our ability to control housing, you've all probably heard of SB 9, where you can now take an R1 zone property, split it into 2 lots, and build 3 units on each of those lots for a total of 6 units where there was once 1. That can happen next to you tomorrow with no public notice. And so this is another one of the bad bills that we've fought, and many of us, myself included, have been fighting the state and trying to gain support to overturn these laws. But unfortunately, these laws are coming out faster and faster, and in fact, there's now hundreds of bills that have been passed by Sacramento since 2016 that are taking away our ability as a local government to manage how our community is developed. And we in Torrance are strongly opposed to that. In fact, Torrance we have jumped into 2 different lawsuits against the state to try to fight these bills. And we know it's an uphill battle, but we believe it's worth fighting for, and I believe it's worth fighting for protecting our communities. And so anything you guys can do to help fight what's going on in Sacramento, please, if you are concerned about this, I urge you to reach out to your state legislators in District 6, our state legislators Al Martucci on the assembly level, and our senators Ben Allen. Those are our 2 state legislators that you can reach out to as your representatives and say, stop this crap about taking over our local control in Sacramento. We want to keep it local. And if you guys don't elect people into Sacramento who oppose these types of bills, you're just going to get more of these types of things, and your community will be impacted and impacted in what I believe is a bad way. Another thing that's affecting us that a lot of people don't know about is, and I know someone else is going to talk about it later, but there's a process that's been in place since 1969 that's a state mandate as well, called Regional Housing Needs Assessment, where basically the state tells every city how many houses they think we should be building to help maintain the quality of life throughout California. Well, up until just a couple years ago, that process was kind of a voluntary thing. We were given our assignments, and many cities, including Torrance, did not meet our required number of housing units that we were requested to build. In fact, these assignments are made on an 8-year basis. So we are recently started the 6th cycle of the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is I call RENA. And so that process just started 2 years ago. the prior assessment we had was we were supposed to build 1,450 units in our city. I think we built less than 200, so we were way below what the state wanted us to build. Now the state says, you cities are not building enough. You need to build way more. And in fact, they increased our regional housing needs assessment number up to 5,000 units that they're requiring the cities to allow for those to be built. Obviously, cities don't build housing, developers do. And so, but we have to allow a process for developers to come into our city and be able to build that amount of housing. And if we don't, now the state has put in penalties for cities who turn down housing. And if we refuse to build housing that's proposed and we aren't meeting our numbers that they expect us to meet, they will penalize us. And one of the worst penalties that they will impose upon us is that if we don't meet our numbers, they're going to let the developers have free reign in our city and no further review of projects. And that would impact a potential project like the one you're here tonight about, is that developers can come in and say, well, the state says you guys haven't met your quotas. We're going to let the developers build wherever they want as long as they're building new housing units. And we won't have any say in it whatsoever. And I can only tell you how bad that will be. So it's a really tough situation that has put local governments in. All city councils are faced with this problem. And we don't want the state to take away our ability to have some control over what's built in our cities. So one of the things that we did do that the state allows us a little bit of control over is we created what's called a housing element. It's a very complicated process that the city spent a huge amount of time to develop. Our housing element is a 700-page document that you can find on our city website. And basically what that housing element does is it defines in our city where we as a city feel housing can be built. And in that letter that you saw from the developer here for this project, they are concerned because we did not state that that property is part of what we want to make as our housing element. So we, as a council and staff and planning, we all said, this is a property that we don't think is a place where we as a city want housing built. And that's good and well, but unfortunately, if the state throws us into that penalty thing, if we aren't building the housing that we want throughout the rest of the city, they'll take our ability to stop that kind of planning and allow the developers to build wherever they want, however much they want, in ways that you can't imagine, and none of it will be good. So I don't mean to be all doom and gloom, but that's really the reality of what's happening up in Sacramento. And I hope you'll pay attention to people like Josie with the messages that they're sending out. Joan is a huge proponent of fighting some of these state bills. I've been involved. I created a group 3 years ago called California Cities for Local Control. I've been working to fight for the last 3 years against what's happening in the state. And I've been spending with a group of volunteers, which Joan and several others in this room have been a part of or are a part of, trying to get support from other locally electeds, and John's a member of our group and so forth, that we really believe that these bills are bad. They're not good for our communities. And Sacramento is just going down the wrong path, and they're rewarding developers at the expense of our communities. And we really believe that we need to stand up for our communities. And thankfully, it hasn't impacted us greatly yet, but these bills are just continuing to come. I know Joan's going to be talking about another really bad bill, SB 423, that's on the table today, and we need to stop that bill before it gets passed. And so she's going to talk about that. So that's the good news I'm sharing. Yeah. I do want to mention, what's that?
What's the bad?
Well, there's bad news too, is we have an airport in Torrance that's causing a lot of problem. Anybody concerned about what's going on at the airport? Yeah, I am too. And I know a lot of people are watching this issue, and I wanted to mention it tonight while I have an audience. It was scheduled to come back to City Council for a full discussion and hopefully some action. It was scheduled to come back on our next council meeting on July 11th. Unfortunately, it just got postponed to July 25th. So if you'd heard it was scheduled for July 11th, it's no longer. It's now scheduled for July 25th. And if you're concerned about the issues related to the airport and the noise and the flight school activity, I urge you to please come to that meeting and share your concerns with the whole council. I probably exceeded my time, Josie.
You have 20 seconds.
I have 20 seconds. Okay.
16.
Well, we have a homeless problem in Torrance on top of everything else. We're working on that really hard. I'll take a quick question. Go ahead.
Sure. So, is there any, I think you can answer this question. Is there any precedent, to your knowledge, of what for the city council to do what Grayland is requesting?
I can't answer that question. He's asking if there's anything we city council can do about it. Well,
No, it's not.
never that since I've been on council, and I don't know if I've been on council. I'm in my 10th year, so it's never happened in my 10 years. If it's happened in the past, I'm not aware of it, but I kind of doubt it. All right, thank you guys. I appreciate. If you have want more information, take my little flyer that's in the back, and you can send me emails with any of your questions or concerns. I'd be happy to try to address them for you. Thank you all so much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Mike. That was very sobering, so you guys have another wine and beer. They'll love us for that. Okay, well, the next speaker is a very energetic man, John Cruikshank from RPV. He's the mayor pro tem. He's got a mile-long resume. He's been over 2 terms on the RPV City Council, and he's now mayor pro tem. He's a registered civil engineer. I think he does structural engineering, USC grad. He has been on multiple boards for private industry, business advocacy, county, regional government boards. Sit down. It's going to take a while, John. And he was voted Alumni of the Year for USC. Now he's running for LA County Supervisor in the 4th District against Janice Hahn. Give it up for John.
So before I start talking, I see all these pizzas up here. Has everyone eaten? Or do people need pizzas in the back? So while I'm talking, feel free to just come up and grab some because I know some people are still hungry. Thank you for that introduction. I appreciated that. So as mentioned, I'm currently on the Rancho Palos Verdes City Council, and I'm finishing up my term right now as the chair of the South Bay City Council of Government. And the reason I bring this up to this group because I actually grew up in the city of El Segundo and I migrated south, and I find that the whole South Bay is a group of cities, 16 cities that work together on problems. And so that's why I'm here to support Josie and her team because, of course, as Steve will tell you as well, all 4 of the peninsula cities always work together, but we also work together with the entire South Bay. So Torrance is a part of that network of council members and people that care about the community and want to make sure that problems that are regional problems are addressed properly. And that all starts with this local control that was talked about. So in the city of Rancho Palos Verdes, of course, if there's a big project that happens in the city of Torrance, it's going to affect the residents that live on the hill because we come and do business in the city of Torrance. We don't have the same type of businesses that you have. You have obviously many more restaurants, many more stores. We, of course, have Terranea, so any of you want to celebrate something nice, we always welcome you to Terranea. But for us, though, we do rely on Torrance as one of those cities. And so in our city, though, we've found ways for us to address the RENA that was mentioned, Mike mentioned, the regional housing needs. Now, we don't have 5,000, but for us, it's 650 units, which is a pretty substantial number. We have 42,000 residents. And then if you kind of look at the map or go on Google Maps and look at Rancho Palos Verdes, you're going to see a bunch of green open space, right? And so if you're up in Sacramento, you probably look at that and say, wow, what a great location for a bunch of condominiums and big houses to go in. And unfortunately, we just don't have the topography. We have the biggest landslide in North America. And so we have some issues on our hill that we have to address. And so for us, we even the 650 unit number is huge for us. And so the way we're going to address that more or less, we have big homes with a lot of elderly people. About 25% of our population are senior citizens. And these are people that are living in fairly good-sized homes. Of course, they have junior ADUs where someone can live in your home. And we would, of course, support people that have healthcare workers or people that take care of their landscaping or other things, maybe to possibly live up there, and then we get credit for that as a housing unit. We also, I don't know if some of you knew this, but in our city, we actually have some of the houses are senior housing projects. So you'll knock on the door and you'll think, it's just a family living in there. Well, there could be 6 or 8 seniors living inside of one of these homes with a nurse. And so as of right now, we can have several of those, and we do have several of those in our city, but we don't get credit for those as individual housing units, even though you've taken 8 people that were in individual houses and you moved them into one home. That should count as 8 units. So we invited the Housing Authority to come down from Sacramento while we're being asked to redo our housing element for this latest cycle of housing units required. And we told them to come tour our city. And they drove all around the peninsula, and they were able to see that that open space that you see on the Google map that just looks like nice green open space is actually protecting our wildlife. They're for our trails, and they're just for the goodness of everything. I mean, it's just great having open space, right? And the reason that Rancho Palos Verdes was created 50 years ago, and that we're celebrating our 50-year anniversary this year, was that they started to build large apartment buildings right on the coast. And so a number of smart residents that were living in the unincorporated area said, we got to stop that. And so they actually developed a Save Our Coastline, Save Our City, and they formed our city. And that went through a lot of work, but sometimes these things that are big problems, they require a lot of work of us. They didn't just sit back and wait for someone else to do it. And so when I come and see a crowd like this, I get energized because I realize every one of you here care about your community, and you want to make sure that everything that you've worked so hard to get isn't destroyed by Sacramento that thinks everything's a one-size-fits-all. We have a senator who's from San Francisco, Senator Wiener. He's actually from the East Coast. If you think San Francisco is a good place, then we would all go live in San Francisco, but we don't live there. We don't want to live in San Francisco. And we don't want San Francisco brought down to us, right? So I think what Josie's doing and all of you being here, I think you need to stay engaged in these issues. I'll tell you right now, the council members that are here, the entire Rancho Palos Verdes City Council, we all care about local control. It's not a party politics thing. It's all about the fact that people have worked hard for their homes and their communities, and we've spent, and our city's the newest on the Hill. We're only 50 years old. Torrance is obviously much older. The other cities on the Hill are much older. And it's taken decades to build what we have here, and so we want to continue to keep what we have, the serenity we have, the traffic, and actually traffic keeps getting worse. And so once again, another regional issue. So you have big projects like this, and you have traffic consultants that work for the developer that say, hey, there's no problem, don't worry about it. Well, we can see what happens when we take our eye off the ball. Josie wanted me to mention a few other things. In our city, and I know wildfires are a big safety concern, certainly on the peninsula they are. And we always work with the other 3 cities because we're all considered part of this very high fire severity zone. A couple issues. A lot of the insurance companies are not doing new policies. You probably saw that, State Farm, Allstate. They're no longer doing any new policies for fire insurance. People that have existing fire insurance have difficulty getting it again, and if you do get it, it's going to be really expensive. And you have a lot of seniors going back to that who are on a fixed income. They can't afford these increased prices. So what happens is, not only is the price go up, but a number of the people that are actually ending up homeless, the largest, fastest growing population of homeless are actually seniors, which really scares me a lot. And you think about that. We have to protect our communities here. And so what we've done in the city of Rancho Palos, we don't sit and wait around. We asked Edison, hey, can you come put those nice cameras that you put up in the Hollywood Hills? And they said no. So we realized we were on our own with Edison. And so we decided, am I out of time? Okay. Okay, 2 quick things. Okay, so first of all, we're putting up our artificial intelligent cameras up on the hill to pick up fires before they get out of control. So it automatically contacts the fire department and tells them. So just to let you know, we're being proactive on the hill. And because I only have a minute and a half, and one of the main reasons I'm here, of course, is because I am running for Los Angeles County Supervisor. I've run my own business for 27 years, and I've been an elected official. And I decided after the pandemic that I thought, wow, we could do things better in LA County. People are moving out of LA County right now, and the reason is because the big issues aren't being addressed. Homelessness, public safety are really the big ones. And so if you're so willing, if you can check out my literature, my shameless literature, it's in the back, you can come see me. And I am all for local control, and I'm all for supporting the South Bay and our locale here. So thank you all, everyone.
Thank you, John. That was very good. Our next speaker has been a big friend to Save Our Neighborhood. Michael Kemps has been at so many meetings from the very beginning. He's a lifelong PVE resident, been 2 terms on the council. He's a big advocate of disaster preparedness, and he's also an instrument-rated private pilot. Give it up for Michael.
Don't hold it against me when you're angry about the airport. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. I love that there's a great showing here. The timing is fortuitous. Palos Verdes Estates, in particular, the peninsula, is celebrating its 100th year this year. And what's interesting and different about our city is we weren't incorporated first. We have our own homes association and deed restrictions that came in at that time that are over the entire city. And then the city was incorporated in 1939, and we went from there. And there's been pushes and struggles in between. But it's interesting to understand that arm's length difference. I actually grew up in John City, just to correct the record. I grew up in Rancho Palos Verdes, and let's see. I think I've probably spent equal years in both cities now, so I think we're fair and square. I was elected in 2019 with the support of Josie and others, and I actually got interested in being on the city council because I cared so much about the character of our city. Little did I know that caring about the development of the house across the street from me would get me into, issues like this, and to paraphrase what Mike Griffith said, that it would get this bad. It's interesting. We talk about housing elements and needs assessments and all the above, and we're all the same in that we're all challenged. Palos Verdes Estates is the oldest city on the hill, and if you think about it, because of the amount of time that it's been developed and developing, in conjunction with the covenants and restrictions that are over the lots, when the state comes to us and says you will build, and the numbers sound small, I think it's 197 for the current cycle, where are we going to put 197 units? So we're going through the same challenges, even though the numbers are smaller. Shortly after elected in 2019, and shortly after that I actually met Joan Davidson, we were involved together in a committee that was working on this issue. I spent most of the summer of 2019 working engaged with a consultant and, mano a mano, editing the document. And on August 19th, 2019, the day of, we provided our 26-page thorough, aggressive response to the DEIR document associated with this project. I can tell you, since I'm not a voting member of the Torrance City Council, that, damn it, I am absolutely 100% object to this project. I will do everything I possibly can to support you. I have, I will, and I will continue to do so.
Michael, what project is that?
The Butcher Solana project. Sorry, I thought we were talking about the airport. No, I'm kidding. You interrupted me. Where was I going? Oh, sorry. I'll catch your question at the end really quick. Okay, so limited sites. ADUs, we're having the same issues. I heard others quote the numbers. We're in the mid-40s in number of approved accessory dwelling units. We have 5,400 total sites in our city with 13,000 residents and already have 40 approved ADUs. We were forced to change our ADU ordinance. In our prior one, we did have restrictions on how narrow the street, or how wide the street had to be to receive ministerial approval of those developments, and now that has also been ripped away. Part of our uniqueness in the CC&Rs is we used to be able to say, oh, sorry, we can't approve that because our homes association has CC&Rs over the lot, and those CC&Rs restrict secondary units to pool houses with no kitchens. We're sorry. Well, the state comes along, coincidentally, and by the way, with all due respect, I apologize if you're a fan, Ben Allen met with me a week prior to this happening and lied to my face and voted yes and passed AB 670, which blew away and bypassed our CC&Rs and allowed ADUs by mandate. So there you have it. very concerned that the fire issue comes up over and over again, and CAL FIRE designates the entire peninsula and that below it as a very high fire zone. But it's okay. We can force density on you, mandate ADUs, and even talk to you about lot splits. It doesn't make sense. And what really doesn't make sense is one size fits all across the entire state. So, totally on board with doing everything we can to fight that. Other issues. We're the only city on the Hill with our own police department. That means we have to fund it, we have to pay for it, and we get to enjoy the response time and the very significant effort. He's smiling because he always gives me crap about this. That we receive from our police department. So the other cities love to joke with us about that, but then we back them up and support them. Other challenges, our fire contract. You know, we go along and we trust and the support of the county and all that we receive. Year over year, the little city of Palos Verdes Estates has had a $1 million increase in its fire contract. In a budget of about $20 million, that is significant. What else can I tell you? I heard some comments. I'm going to go a little more.
Explain CCR.
I will. Quickly, I think it was Mike that made comments about, be careful who you elect. Again, this is not a party preference issue. We have totally lost the middle. So whichever political party you're a member of, we have to find the middle. We have lost it. And because we've found the middle and because of who have been voted into the state legislature, you are now seeing the result. I beg you, this is the way to solve it. Yes, we can go after state initiatives. Yes, we can change things by mandate. But at the end of the day, if there is a supermajority in that legislature, they will run you over. Thank you for the bell. CC&Rs, covenants and restrictions that are private contracts between a homeowners association and the homeowners, separate and apart from and arm's length from a city, which is a separate municipality.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. The next speaker, another longtime friend of Save Our Neighborhood. He's a former mayor and council member of Rolling Hills Estates. He served for over 20 years. On the website, you still see him riding a horse. Currently, he's on the board of the Southern California Clean Power Alliance. Give it up for Steve Zuckerman.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be very, very brief. I kind of want to limit my comments to the project, the Butcher Solana project, and to the housing issue that everyone, I think, has already outlined pretty well. I think my main point that I'd like to bring out about that is regardless of this contract or regardless of lawsuits that other cities may be engaged in right now, for example, Huntington Beach, I think the most important thing is local control, and long-term, the only way to deal with that is a constitutional amendment, and that's going to have to come in the manner that Mike is talking about. Mike has been working at this now for a couple years and has really done a lot of heavy lifting, and it's come down to money. It really has, because the movement needs signatures. Signatures need signature gatherers. It's my understanding right now that a signature costs about $5, but as we get closer to election time, that goes up. And that could go up, I've heard, to as much as $15, which could be critical in this effort. If there's anything that anyone should walk away from this meeting with, it's a commitment, whether it's large or small. Some people have written some very large six-figure checks. A lot of people have written two-figure checks. Any check would be very, very important. You'll find where, I think Mike's right back in the rear right now, and here's Joan, who's been Mike's right-hand lady the whole time with envelopes. Take one of these home and figure, look, I'm paying a lot of money now for whatever it is, my extra streaming service, my special coffees at Starbucks with my buddies on Saturday morning, whatever it is, look at that and then look at what this represents, and please put a check in this envelope and send it. And if nothing else makes any sense from this meeting, that should. I've been on our city council, actually I was on for 25 years, more and more grandchildren as I get older, and it finally became time for me to say goodbye. Debbie Segura was going to be here. She was busy. She's now our council member, and I'm kind of filling in for her. But I'm reluctant to, quote, represent the city. I'm no longer on the council. What I can tell you is that the most important reason for a city to exist is the reason that John gave, and that is local control, more specifically, land use planning. If you cannot engage in your own local land use planning, what's the point of a city? I cannot think of anything more germane, more elemental to what a city is for. Our city also started for the same reason. We were county unincorporated, and we started seeing approval of projects. This was way back when, in the mid-50s, that we thought threatened what we felt was an important way of life for the people that already lived there. We incorporated, and until the most recent few years, we've had good luck planning our city's land use. We can't do it anymore. Our hands are tied. And to be honest, it's beyond depressing. I can get into details. They talk about these regional housing needs assessment numbers. Those numbers those numbers are not the numbers that the state's Department of Economics came up with. They were tasked with this. They came up with a number, and community and housing development pushed them out of the way and arbitrarily imposed numbers that absolutely don't make sense. I'm going to say one more thing, and I apologize, and that is people talk about the need for, quote, more housing. My feeling is there has to be priorities in anything we do, and the priority should be homelessness. If we can't start to deal meaningfully with homelessness, we have no right building housing for middle and upper income people and not even thinking about how does this help with the homelessness issue. So I think from an ethical standpoint and from a local control standpoint, this is probably the biggest watershed development that I'll ever see in my lifetime. And I want you to take an envelope, and I want you to put a check in it, and I want you to get this to the people that know what they're doing.
Thank you, Steve. We're going pretty quickly with the speakers because we're saving time for the end for all your questions. So the next speaker, everyone knows, she's a tireless advocate. She's focusing on environmental and quality of life issues. If you go to a meeting, Joan is there. I mean, everyone has met Joan, and she was a longtime teacher at South High School. I used to see her walking the landfill after that with a group of teachers. She served on the PV school board and the board of SoCal Rock. Give it up for Joan Davison.
Thank you. A lot of people in this room I've known for a very long time, and I'm very grateful that they're here tonight. It's important that every person in every household pay attention and participate in what Steve was just talking about and what the other council members have said. Every homeowners association in Torrance and PV has to pay attention, because without your involvement, the developers and the lobbyists will win. Well, I can't adjust it. Well, I guess I have to do this. All right. Because of COVID, I didn't want to do that. Okay, too late. State housing bills started passing during COVID when you had other things to worry about. Sacramento had many distractions for you. During COVID, everyone was worried about their health, but Senator Scott Wiener saw an opportunity. He's from San Francisco. Together with developers and high-tech funding, he joined with a group called Yes in My Backyard, better known as the YIMBYs, and he wanted to establish housing laws that hurt every city in the state of California. He is planning right now, today as we sit here, a 52-story building 3 blocks from the ocean on a boulevard where my granddaughter goes to school. So imagine in Torrance on Newton Street that someone suddenly says, well, I'm going to build 52 stories here. That's what they're doing. Go online and look up 2700 Sloat, S-L-O-A-T Boulevard. It's now a florist, or what do you call it, a plant center. But that plant center, the YIMBYs want a 52-story building. It's amazing. Do you want this on Hawthorne Boulevard? Do you want it on Crenshaw Boulevard? Do you want it on the ocean in Rancho Palos Verdes? No. In fact, John City was created to avoid that 50 years ago. Senate Bill 9, 2 years ago, authored by Scott Wiener and Tony Atkins, my favorite, divided every single home parcel into 2 lots. So if a developer comes to you and says, I'll give you $1 million for your house, and you take it, he can build 6 units, 3 on each parcel, 6 units. And that's happening. In fact, it just happened in Redondo Beach. Tony Atkins stood on the floor of the state Senate a few years ago to pass this law, and she was asked by the state senator Bates from Laguna Woods, will HOAs and housing and CIDs, community interest developments, be exempt? Tony Atkins said yes. She was lying. So she came out later with the letter saying, whoops, no, that's going to have to go to court. But on the floor of the state Senate, that's what Tony said. Let's see. The Senate Bill 423 is at the State Assembly. It's already passed the State Senate. I am very passionate about that, so excuse me if I'm a little hyped up. It's going to, if it passes the State Assembly, it erases the environmental review for all the projects. It's going to fast track everything. The cities will have nothing to say. So it will take away or erase CEQA, better known as the California Environmental Quality Act, and it's going to allow people to build on wetlands and protected properties. Woohoo! What a great win for us. I'm asking everybody, although today it probably passed out of the Assembly Committee. It's going to go to the floor by next week. I tried to find out. I couldn't find out online before I showed up here tonight. I'm asking about everybody. That's why I passed out the pink flyers. Flood Al Tucci's office with calls. Flood it. And flood Anthony Rendon. He is the Speaker of the State Assembly. Flood his office with calls saying no. No on Senate Bill 423. That's the last nail in the coffin for all of us. I want to say, and I will speak to what Steve is saying, there is one solution to all of this. If we can get that state initiative that Bill Brand authored with a team up and down the state of California, they're all elected officials working on this, this will erase everything we're afraid of. It will be bye-bye. So I'm asking you to support our neighborhoodvoices.com, and I do have some envelopes, but you can also donate online. Just click donate. We need money. The petitions won't come out till after the state Secretary of State reads this and puts his stamp of approval, so probably September. But they need money now, because they're not going to submit this in July until they have money from everybody in this room, because they don't have enough. Sad but true. That's a fact of life. So most of the very wealthy people out there in the world are developers. They're not going to give them any money. A lot of people have. A woman from Alameda had given them $200,000. They need $3 million. So they have about $1 million. They need your funds, and they need it now. So I'm asking you to do this. And then we're going to have volunteers get the petitions going, and everybody takes the petition, gets 100 or more signatures on them. It goes to the state. They need 1 million signatures from all of you. So if you don't step up and help out, look out for a 52-story building next to your cute little house. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Just a quick show of hands. How many people have interacted with the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy? That's pretty good. You know, it's such a treasure. We are so lucky. One of the leaders of the movement started it in 1988 with Bill Ayler. He's supported us a lot, given us a lot of great ideas. There's, in the third page of your packet, there's information about the PVP Land Conservancy. It's just an amazing resource. They protected over 1,600 acres. And they're just like us, when development started and it was going to be the wrong development, they got mobilized and they protected the land, and it's protected in perpetuity. So that is a way that we can stop development on sites that should not be developed. Currently, the Land Conservancy is forming a wildlife corridor. They had a $30 million goal. They raised $25 million. So there's a lot of money for conservancies to buy properties. We've always said we would love to see the Butcher Hill area as a natural open space and part of a conservancy. So we have also the South Bay Parklands. That's from Redondo Beach. That was started when the AEC plant development was getting going over there. Both of these conservancies are great models for Torrance. Now, Torrance is really not that far back from being very strong on open space. The people for the Madrona Marsh formed in 1973, and it took them almost 10 years to get the Madrona Marsh. So, and that is a resource today that helps every bit of the open space in the whole area, the last remaining vernal marsh in the whole area. So the question has come up many times in the Save Our Neighborhood meetings. Does Torrance start its own land conservancy? And there's so many places where we could put native plants and just have that open space throughout Torrance. Torrance could be a powerhouse and help distribute native plants to make positive changes, like getting rid of lawns and reducing water usage, and going with native plants that have they don't burn like invasive plants do. So on the fourth page of your packet, there's a little information about native plants. And so the next speaker is someone that I've known her whole life. She's a recent grad of UC San Diego. When she wasn't playing soccer and coming here a lot of times, she was hiking or gardening. And she's found her passion, and that is native. She's a native plant designer. So give it up for my daughter, Stephanie Hemingway.
Thank you, everyone. So like my dad said, I'm a native plant landscape designer. So I'm going to be talking about why we should establish the Butcher Hill area as a native habitat restoration site. So by doing this, we can actually we can vastly reduce fire danger, we can help prevent landslides and soil erosion, and we can provide habitat for endangered species. So first, as a landscape designer, I have designed a landscape in Rolling Hills Estates that's fire resistant, completely consistent with the new LA County fireproof guidelines, and I used all native plants for that. So for some context, native plants are the plants that are natural to this area. They evolved in this environment, and they were here before people came and brought plants from elsewhere. And we are in the coastal sage scrub plant community, which is a naturally sparse area. It's like a coastal desert. So that means plants are naturally spaced out. They're never too clustered together. But on the other hand, invasive weeds, like the ones you see on Butcher Hill, they're very clustered together, and they completely die and dry out just in time for fire season. Meanwhile, native plants go dormant in the summer and early fall when fire season happens, yet they're still alive and they retain some water. And so when a fire breezes through an area that's been overrun by invasive weeds, it actually burns hotter because there's more fuel, there's more dead brush clustered together, and the fire moves quicker because of all the brush so close together. And these are the types of fires that take forever to burn out. But if it's a healthy native plant community, the plants are going to be spaced out. The fire is actually going to move slower and dissipate as it goes between plant to plant because the plants are never too close together. So I brought a poster here that demonstrates native plant landscape, and as you can see, if you can see, I would suggest coming to take a look afterwards. The fire has attacked the landscape, but yet the house is completely reserved. The deck has been scorched, but that's it. And then only a few years later, the landscape has completely recovered. So it's pretty amazing, and I would suggest native plants that are adequately spaced out and irrigated if you're concerned about creating a fire-resilient landscape for your own home. So onto the issue of erosion control and landslides. We need to establish native plants on hillsides if we want to help prevent landslides. The thing that destroys soil integrity is invasive weeds and non-native plants because actually what we don't see is the underground network called mycorrhizae. It's beneficial bacteria and microbes that form mutualistic relationships with plant roots. So they help native plants retain water, and so they help keep adequate moisture in the soil which helps keep the soil together. So this actually greatly helps reduce landslides. And one more thing is that we have 3 endangered species right in this area, and we could easily turn the Butcher Hill area into a habitat for them. For example, we have the California gnatcatcher, which is a small bird, and it has been found in all directions around the Butcher Hill area. And actually, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service designated the Butcher Hill area as a critical habitat for the gnatcatcher. And the plant, the coastal sagebrush that supports the gnatcatcher, is already abundant in that area, so we can easily establish it there. And the plant that supports the PV blue butterfly is already in the area. So we could follow in the footsteps of South Bay Parkland Conservancy. They have volunteer days every single weekend, so we can do some habitat restoration in our neighborhood, and we could potentially get the area protected if we have these endangered species, and we'd never have to worry about fighting another development again.
That's my girl. Okay, well, time for questions. If anyone has any questions and wants to speak in the microphone, here you go. Says, what are the 3 most important things we do today to stop Butcher Hill?
Well, as you all know, we fought body, words, council meetings, everything. The thing that is left to do now is to support legislation that favors our quality of life. Contact our representatives, councilmen, senators, who am I missing? Governor, everybody, and let them know we want control of our own cities. We don't need anybody else to tell us what to do. We know what we need. So right now, the things that we can do, support legislation that preserves the quality of life, gives us control of our city, call council members, senators, tell them no on bad laws, and always attend my meetings.
My point is this: we're here because we oppose the proposed project at Butcher Hill. How do we stop it? I understand there's all this stuff going on in Sacramento we don't like, but this can happen before we get any traction. Butcher Hill can happen before we get any traction on that other stuff, right? Because it's next fall, next year, for that referendum to go on the ballot. And this thing, they could have broken ground by then. Well, no, but it's before the city council. I asked Mike this question earlier in the back of the room. I said, is there any precedent for this? There's no precedent for what they're asking. So the city council, my God, they could do anything. Sure.
Okay, so I'll answer for Torrance because I know they can't speak about issues, but in Rancho Palos Verdes, I'll tell you exactly how it works with city council issues. So when residents don't want something, they become very vocal, and they start to call us, they start to write us, they send tons of emails, and they show up at the meetings. If you remember, there was something called short-term rentals that came before the Rancho Palos Verdes. I was not on the council yet, I was on the planning commission. This was actually a very contentious issue within our city. When the residents started showing up in force, that's when the council acted to eliminate short-term rentals in our city. This is exactly the same with what you're talking about. So the reason that the city, all of us city officials are here and talking about our housing elements is that we're being forced by the state to identify the number of housing units that can possibly be built within our city, sites, locations. So in other words, we as a council, we've actually have several sites we've identified all throughout the city. And like I said, we have to potentially build 650, or somebody has to. Cities do not build housing projects. All we do are approve and disapprove. And at this point, we're not even allowed to do that. But we still have zoning codes that have not been broken yet. So for your question there, if you don't want that project to happen, you need to show up and you need to tell all the council members over and over you don't want it. And not just you, but everyone. As many people as you can get, because that's our job to listen to the people we represent. And so I guarantee that'll have the best impact of anything. You could try Sacramento, but that's not going to do a darn thing about that project. So you guys need to get to your council meetings, and you need to talk to your council members.
No, I want you to talk. Thank you. You have to understand two things. Torrance didn't, the zoning for that land is still agricultural. So you're worrying that you will they would have to rezone it. They're not going to do it. Number two, that land is not in their city element, so it's not identified as a place to build this kind of housing.
One more piece to add. Yes, there's a disconnect between the legislature and the local councils. Absolutely pressure the local councils. We absolutely love it when you do that. Liar. There we go. There's the laughing. SB 423 is one more piece of legislation that's going to blow this away. If CEQA is blown away, you could have a unanimous 7-0 council refusing this project, and it won't matter, potentially. It won't matter potentially because CEQA gets blown away, and it's one less thing that stands in the way of this project being developed. So if you're asking what can we do in cross-comparison, yes, of course, pressure your local officials, but to the degree that the state removes their ability to control it, that's a problem. Go ahead.
With SB 9 and 10 already passed and 423 in the works, eliminating R1 zoning, can they override other zoning like agricultural as well?
I actually can't speak exactly to the question, but they're taking this away one piece at a time. And I'll say the reason for my 423 comment is this project specifically has a CEQA impact. There is an environmental impact in that location. I believe so, but again, we shall see. You know, none of these are definites, and I'm not telling you what is or isn't going to happen. Obviously, the Torrance council members can't speak to you as directly as this. I will also tell you, you don't have to pressure us. We sent Palos Verdes Estates to send letter after letter after letter. In particular, when this letter that you're staring at came through, I wrote the response, and our whole council got behind it, 5-0. So we're behind you, we support you, and we collaborate with Torrance, but we're not making that decision. Yes?
Okay, so she asked how we go about making the Butcher Solana area a conservancy, untouchable. I think that would involve some politics that I'm not completely sure about.
Okay, so from Rancho Palos Verdes' perspective, what the city has actually done is bought every one of that property. So the city owns all the open space in Rancho Palos Verdes, and the Land Conservancy manages the property. So that's how it happens. It has to be purchased. In our case, it got purchased by the city of Rancho Palos Verdes.
All you bombard Mayor Chen and tell him the city of Torrance needs to buy Butcher Solana. I have been told and heard that we have $60 million surplus. Why can't we buy it? Why can't we buy it? Get on the phone, email them, tell them, buy it. It's debatable. I'm saying in the area what I heard, 14, 15 million. This project has been tried to been built 6 times and it's not been successful. That lets me believe we could purchase it at a decent lower price. We should work on that. Hammer the city, buy the property, buy the property, buy the property, buy the property. It's been in escrow for 7 years. There's contingency clauses on this property. Everybody's getting fed up with it. I think the owner of the property is Raylan. They have some kind of a contract.
Okay, so there is an actual owner on the property.
Well, there is an owner that owns the property, and there's a potential sale, providing that it gets approved for what they want. Anybody can purchase. Anybody got 15 million here they want to buy the property with and preserve it? But we can put pressure on the city of Torrance to do it, just like Rancho Palos Verdes has bought the land. Okay, next.
One thing that no one has said in all of these housing element laws is that they eliminate the requirement for parking. They can build anything they want, anywhere they want, if these laws aren't put in check and there's no requirement for parking. You know, it's insane. So when you think of whether or not you've got $100 or $200 or $300 to contribute to either the Butcher Hill anti-Butcher Hill or supporting the neighborhood voices, this is what you're looking for. This is what you're looking at, and it takes 1 or 2 projects in your neighborhood to complete. I don't know how many of you live in neighborhoods that has parking impacts right now, or narrow streets that you can't pass. You can only park on one side and not the other. But this is going to affect every single one of us, no matter where we live. And you get a number of these things anywhere near Hawthorne Boulevard or Crenshaw or PCH. How many of you drive to a freeway? How much more time do you want to spend driving to it? You know, and it's money. There's people out there that have lots of money that want to see these things done. And one of the few ways we have to counter it is with money to fight it.
Thank you.
Just one more quick thing. Judy Brunetti, who's the president of the Hollywood Riviera Homes Association and with co-president with Pam, we both went to the Torrance Water Department and met with, what was his name? Who did we meet? Who's the head of the water? John Dedham? Dedel. Anyway, he had a great idea. Butcher Hill is the place where with 3 cities water comes drains. Rancho Palos Verdes down Hawthorne Boulevard, PV Estates, and Torrance's water. They all come together. Torrance bought or created Entradero Park as a holding, what would you call it? Pond and detention basin, thank you. And that water is for ground use. It's going into the ground. Torrance got together with the Santa Monica Bay Group, and they raised the money. And I think they still have grant money. It can be done, but it can't be done without you. And if you don't support our neighborhood voices, doesn't matter. You're going to have a 52-story building on Hawthorne Boulevard. Thank you. Go online to our neighborhoodvoices.com. It says donate. You click a button. If you give $25, great. If you give $500, better. Whatever you can give is very well appreciated. And it says endorse. Click that, because there's over 50,000 people who have endorsed this already. B50,001. Thank you.
There has been a number of cities who are suing the state regarding all of these new laws, new legislation controlling the city councils of the city's laws. Where is this going? I have not heard anything further about it.
Okay, so there's 2 lawsuits that are against SB 9, and the reason there's 2 lawsuits is because there's 2 different types of cities. If you don't know, there's a general law city, which Rancho Palos Verdes is. We follow the state constitution, and then there's charter cities, which Torrance is, and you have your own charter, your own form of government you've created, your own laws and ordinance bylaws. So those are the 2. So Torrance is actually part of the SB 9 lawsuit with a few other cities, and that one's continually moving forward because generally people look at charter cities as having some more independence than general law cities. Our city joined the general law city. Us and Lakewood were the first 2 cities. I believe Simi Valley and a couple other cities have joined us. Our lawsuit still is ongoing, but the initial ruling from the judge is that it's potentially not going to move forward. We're not going to give up on it ever. Our council always talks about being the path of most resistance, so we're going to continue to fight these lawsuits, and we hope as many cities want to join us that are general law. But of course, other cities that are charter cities, I'm sure Torrance would love to have as many cities join them as possible. Part of our problem is that it's not Southern California we have the issue. A lot of Central California and other cities north of us, they actually kind of like these laws. So we're not necessarily in a majority fighting this thing. So it's not a slam dunk on any of these, but we have to fight it through the courts as well, because what we believe is that ultimately cities have the right to control their own destiny. Just like we as individuals have the right to control our own destiny, and we believe cities have more rights than the state does, and so that's the whole premise behind our lawsuit. So it's going to continue, but the one with the general law has a little more stumbling going on than the charter city, which seems to be moving forward a little more nicely.
Okay. One thing I'd like to mention, down on the tables there, I have a couple little signs there that has John Cruikshank's little brochure running for LA County Supervisor. If anybody would like to work on his campaign, there's a sign-in sheet. Please do so. This guy is looking out to protect the quality of life of our residents. I believe in him, and I would like to see you join and help him. Also, we would like you to join our teammates in Save Our Neighborhood to continue our fight. So sign up, please. Anybody else? I think we're pretty good here. Steve? Any final words from these guys? Here you go.
No, my final word is thank you all for coming out. I think it's great to see citizen involvement. Give yourselves a hand.
Grateful for you coming. Please stay engaged. I know that it gets frustrating. I know that sometimes it seems like it'll never end, and unless we fight, it will not.
Okay. We want a statement over here from one of our guests.
Just in return, I want to say we want to thank all of you for coming and making the presentations, because I've been coming to these many, many times, but there's always something new. You're learning something every day. Thank you for your support to help us out.
Thank you, and go to our neighborhood voices when you get home. Thank you.
Thank you, and good night. Oh, let's thank Joan Davidson. She generously bought your pizza. She's a real fighter, this lady. Pardon? I said of course. Of course.